What's up, YouTube peeps and barbecue freaks? Thank you guys for stopping by today. Today we're going to do a rack of spare ribs on the Weber Kettle. I'm going to take you from start to finish and show you how to cook them on the Weber Kettle. My guess is that most people don't have like an offset smoker or Weber Smoky Mountain, something like that, but most people have a kettle of some sort. And I think that those folks will find this video really helpful. Now, many of you already know how to cook ribs, and you know, some of you probably won't get a whole lot from this, but lately I've been getting a lot of questions about how to cook ribs, how to cook brisket, how to, you know, from people who are just getting started into cooking and have probably never done some of this stuff before. So I'm going to do a basic video from start to finish, and show you how I cook them on the Weber, on how I cook the ribs on a Weber Kettle, and show you how you can do it as well. So we're going to get these ribs out of the package. I have a 4.5 pound rack of spare ribs, and we're going to get them seasoned up, throw them on the kettle. We're going to keep it simple, and I think some of you will find this helpful. At least I hope so. Let's get started. All right, so here I have the full rack of spare ribs, and I'm going to do very little trimming on these. In fact, I'm actually making these for my father-in-law, and he's instructed me not to trim it off, not to trim it apart, separate the rib tips from the actual ribs itself. So I'm going to keep it very simple. I'm just going to trim off just some of this fat that I see, like down here you got this big old chunk of fat. You don't want that. That's not going to do anything but just be really chewy. And you know what, I don't like that this is open like this. It has this hole in here, so I am gonna, he won't know, shh, don't tell anybody, but I'm gonna go ahead and just do a little bit of right there, trim that off just a little bit. Now I would normally trim these up more than I'm gonna do now. This part is just really thin, and it's gonna burn right up. I am going to remove the membrane. There's this flap of skin here. Sometimes it's a pretty big flap. This one isn't. I'm gonna just trim away a little bit at that. But we're gonna remove this membrane from the back, and that's probably gonna be all the trimming that I do. Let's get this turned around. You can see it here. Just take your knife, stick it under there, or like the back end of a spoon or something. And just going to pull this right off with a paper towel. Now, before I pull it off, one thing I want you to see, and let me see if I hope you can make it out here. On the back of these ribs, it actually has two layers of membrane. One that actually sticks on to the bones itself, and the other one is the one that we're separating. So it might take some practice, but you'll learn to get right in between those two layers. You know that you've gone underneath that second one, which is too far, when you pull it off and you start seeing the whole bone itself. So you want to make sure that you get in between those two layers of skin and only pull off the outside membrane. Again, using a paper towel will really help grab onto that because it's pretty slippery. Sometimes it comes off in one whole pull, sometimes it takes a couple. And that's pretty much it. There is some fat here that I'm gonna trim off. If you're, you know, just cooking at home and you don't want to do a whole lot of trim work, then leave that fat on. It isn't gonna kill it. One thing I am going to do that I totally forgot. There's this breastbone here that I'm going to remove. Let me get another knife for that. So just going to turn this around, and on a full spare rib, full rack of spare ribs, there's always this breastbone here. that you got to remove. I would highly recommend removing that every time. So from there on, I'm not going to do any more trimming. That is it. This isn't the prettiest rack, but you know what? They said they didn't want it trimmed up, so I'm not trimming it. I'm going to leave it just the way it is. But it would normally look a lot better than this. All right, once you got the ribs trimmed up to your liking, then we're going to apply the rub. You can use any rub you like. You could keep it as simple as just using salt, pepper, and garlic. I have a video of that recipe on how I make my SPG that I will leave a link to down in the show more box. But or you could buy one off the shelf from your grocery store. This one that I have here is one that I made up. I found a rub recipe, a rib rub recipe, and I wanted to give it a shot. So that's what I have here. I will leave the recipe for this rub down in the show more or down in the description box. Just hit the show more button and I'll have the ingredients along with the measurements. But we're going to come back. Now you can use a binder if you like. Some people will put mustard, oil, whatever. I'm not going to use a binder this time. We're just going to apply it right onto the meat. Again, use your favorite rub, make up your own, pick one off the shelf. I mean, there are just tons of rubs. It just kind of depends on what you like. You like something that's savory, something that's sweet, something with some heat. This one here that I made up is, it's a little sweet, but it has just a little kick on the end. Now, I know it's a rub, but you don't rub the rub in. Whatever you do, don't do that. What's going to happen is once you start rubbing it around, you're actually moving that rub all over the place, and then you end up with some spots that have more rub than other spots. You want to give it a good even coating. So apply your even coating and just pat it down into the meat. And this goes for all meats, ribs, brisket, chicken. At least that's my approach. Some people will rub, and you know, that's fine if you like to actually rub it in there, but I don't. Let's get this turned around, and then we're just going to apply the rub on top. Again, an even coating. And I think that's going to do it. You go as heavy or as light as you'd like. Since I'm not flipping it over again, I'm not going to pat it down. What we're going to do is we're going to let this rack sit here for a little bit and let that rub soak into the meat. And you'll know when it's ready, because it'll be right now it looks really dry, but you'll see that rub will start pulling out the moisture and it'll have like a nice wet look to them. So we're going to let these sit here. We're going to head outside, get the Weber Kettle set up. I'll show you how I do that, and we'll get these ribs on. All right, so the way that I have my kettle set up is I'm using my slow and sear, but if you don't have a slow and sear, that's okay. What you want to do is just kind of bank your coals to one side, or use like the steak method and just kind of line them up. It takes a little more time, but you know, some people prefer that. But if you want to just bank them up or bank them up against one side of your Weber kettle, that's fine. Now, I'm not going to light the slow and sear the traditional way, because again, I'm trying to show people how to light the charcoal who may not have a slow and sear, and you know, have to maybe use a brick like Brother Lau does sometimes. You could put a brick in here to hold that charcoal back, or just kind of pile it up. But let's see if you can see this. Over here, I've got some charcoal. I got about 15 pieces of charcoal over here lighting up. And what I'm going to do is, once those are ready, I'm going to dump them on top of these. And what's going to happen is the ones that are lit will slowly, damn train, will slowly light the ones that aren't lit. So what that's going to do is give you a longer burn. And then The wood, you can use whatever wood you like, oak, cherry, pecan, whatever. I'm gonna use, I'm gonna drop some cherry wood in here. I'm using chunks. We'll place those in here once I put the coals in. If you were using wood chips, I would soak those for a good 20-30 minutes before putting them on, so that way they get a longer burn. The wood chunks, you do not soak in water. It's not going to soak up the water, and so you're just kind of wasting your time. Plus, they're going to burn longer anyway. So this is how I have the kettle set up. Once these 15 pieces of charcoal are ready to go, we'll dump them on top, and I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so these coals that I had lit are ready to go. I'm going to take them and dump them right on top. And again, what this is going to do is those lit coals will catch the unlit coals over time, and that's going to give you a long burn. Now, this has a water pan in here, and I will add water in here. If you're banking your coals up against the side of your kettle, you can always put a full pan underneath and just put some water in there, and what that's going to do is give you moisture throughout the cook. Now that I got these on, I'm going to get my wood chunks. Again, I'm using cherry wood, and these big chunks, there's no need to soak them. Okay, if you were using wood chips, I would say soak them, but not these. And just place them, you know, throughout the cook, or throughout the coals, just like that. We're gonna get our grate on, and then let's go get that rack of ribs. All right, as you can see, I hope you can make it out, that rub has sweated into the ribs, and they look kind of moist, wet. That's because that, as the rub sweats into that meat, it's rehydrating those spices. So one thing also, if you're cooking the ribs and you're leaving the rib tips on, there isn't any fat in these rib tips. So these things will dry out really easily. So you want to make sure that they're faced away from the heat so they don't dry out so quick. And at this point, I'm not going to monitor the temp. I know this pit well enough to know that it's going to sit around 275, 285 when I set my vents. And being that it's a little windy out here today, you know, it might even go just a little higher than that. But I'm going to leave the bottom vents just cracked open just a tad, and the same thing with the top vent. And that should give me about 275. Again, if you want to use a thermometer to monitor your temps, by all means do it. But I know this pit well enough. Again, we'll get the lid on it, and probably about the 1 hour mark, we'll start spritzing, and I will use a mixture of apple juice, a 50-50 mix of apple juice and apple cider vinegar. So let's get the lid on, and I'll pick back up once we start spritzing. All right, these ribs have been on for a little over an hour, just over an hour. Take a look at them. Yeah, you see they're starting to get dried. So we're going to take this 50-50 mix of apple juice, apple cider vinegar. Again, you can spritz with whatever you want. If you want to just use plain water, you could definitely do that. But, or apple juice by itself, or just apple cider vinegar by itself. Strictly up to you. Starting to get some pullback on this side a little bit on these bones. So that's good. And then at this point, I am going to spritz about every 15 to 20 minutes for the next hour. All right, you guys, these ribs have been going for about 2.5 hours. Now we're going to wrap. And when it comes to determining on when to wrap, it really isn't like a set time, you know, 2.5 hours, 3 hours. It really depends on your bark. Once your bark on your ribs or even your brisket get to the color that you like, that's when you want to wrap. So for these, I'm going to take some brown sugar. And what we're doing here is we're just adding some extra flavor, some sweetness to it. It's gonna add some sweetness and some moisture. Take some butter here. I'll have to get the other one out. And then we're gonna add some honey. You know, let me add a little more butter here. I'm gonna open up this new container here. Give it a good shake. There you go. And then we're gonna add some honey. We're going to take some barbecue sauce and add that on top. And you can use whatever barbecue sauce you like. Use your favorite sauce. And then we're going to get these ribs and add the ribs onto the top of this. So these ribs have gotten to the color that I like. So we're going to take these, put them meat side down. Okay, and then we're just gonna repeat the process: brown sugar, honey, butter. Add some brown sugar, some honey, and some of this butter. It's parquet. We're going to get them wrapped up. And make sure you double wrap it with heavy duty foil, because these bones will poke through, or like these points at the end that are sharp will poke through. Put it over there. And then we're going to get these back on the Weber. I did not add any extra charcoal or wood or anything like that. If you light it the way I showed you at the beginning, that fire should still be good to go. Now keep in mind that the ribs are meat side down. And this is where you want to watch it and check it at about 45 minutes to an hour, depending on how hot you're cooking. If you're going low and slow, you could probably check it in about an hour. If you're going a little faster, or hotter and faster, I would suggest 30 to 45 minutes. But since the ribs are meat side down, that brown sugar will burn. And if you aren't careful and you leave them in there too long, it's gonna burn that meat. It's gonna burn the ribs and you're gonna ruin them. So the temp that I'm running at, or the way that I have my pit set up, I'm gonna check these in about 45 minutes and see if they need to go any longer or not. But we're gonna take these, put them back on the Weber Kettle, and pick back up in about 45 minutes. All right, you guys, these ribs have been on wrap for right at about an hour. And I put them all, take a look at them. To me, they're done. So what I did is I put them off the pit and just kind of flipped them back over, meat side up. And you can see all that brown sugar that's melted with the butter, honey, sauce, and still some of that fat that rendered out. Instead of actually putting barbecue sauce on these, I mean, you could sauce them with some barbecue sauce, throw them back on the pit for about 15 minutes to let that sauce set. But since this already has some sauce in it, I'm just gonna baste these ribs with this juice. I'm telling you, this juice is something else, something good. You can see, well, I don't know if you can see here, but right here, this rib already, when I picked it up, start to tear apart. So, you know, that tells me they're done. This sauce here, good gosh, that's good. It's sweet, and there's just a tad of heat. And that heat comes from the barbecue sauce that I used. And then in some of the the cayenne from the rub. So that's it. I'm gonna take these out. I'm gonna slice them up, and then we'll give them a taste. But man, look at that. These ribs look good. Now you can do this here without putting any sauce, just sauce it like this and throw it back on the pit as well, you know, for about 10 minutes, but I'm not gonna do that. That's it. I'm gonna let them rest for about 5 minutes and then I'm gonna cut into them. All right, I got the ribs out. We're going to, just gonna start cutting here at the end. Man, these things are tender. Good gosh almighty. Oh, that was good. Look, I mean, this meat is already like falling off the bone. This bone is popping out. Man, oh man. Yeah, these things are good. They're gonna be really good, you guys. I can tell these rib tips, they normally tend to dry out. These rib tips are really tender. You can tell by this one here. Get these cut up and then we're gonna give them a taste. That should be it. All right, let's, man, I don't even know where to begin. These things are way tender. Let's see if you can make this out. Can you make this out? Let me come over here. This rib, I don't know if you can pick it up, but definitely has moisture in it. Like it's about to fall apart. See, this rib tip is barely hanging on. Good gosh, nice smoke ring. Look at that. Moist, tender. Let's give one of these bad boys a taste. All right, you guys, let's give this rib, look at this. I don't know if you can make that out, but man, that is pretty. The color is phenomenal. Got that glaze on here. Hope you can make it out. This rib is hot. My fingers are burning. We're gonna give it a taste really quickly. Oh yeah, look at that, right off the bone. That's hot. Wow, man, those ribs are definitely packed with flavor. That rub, this is the first time using that rub, and I'm going to use it again and try it by itself without adding like the brown sugar, honey, and all that to the ribs. But so far on these ribs, I'm really digging that rub. I like it. Of course, it has that sweetness from the brown sugar and the honey, and then there's just a tad of heat from that cayenne powder in the rub, and I think a little bit from the barbecue sauce that I used. I used a I forget where I put the sauce, but it's a apple habanero sauce. So there's a little bit of heat from there, but I think most of it is coming from that cayenne in the rub. But the sweetness, along with just that tad of heat, perfect. Man, these ribs turned out great. So, you know, if you follow these directions, I'm confident you'll be able to produce, you know, quality ribs yourself. So I hope you guys found that enjoyable, useful. I enjoyed doing it. I definitely enjoyed eating the ribs, and I'm going to finish this rib. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys next time. Take care.